Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman will join us in just a moment. Here's what we're looking at.
People of Chicago are counting on us to work together.
Mayor Brandon Johnson's first city council meeting. Our Spotlight Politics team breaks it down for us.
We have an agreement on a balanced budget.
That's right, Democrats in Springfield strike an agreement. Amanda Vinicky is live from Springfield with the details. Former head of Chicago Public Schools, Janice Jackson, to talk about debt-free colleges and an elected school board.
I'm Angelito, and coming up tonight, we're tufting our own rugs in Bridgeport.
And remembering the queen of rock and roll, Tina Turner. And now to Brandis for today's top story.
Paris Mayor Brandon Johnson leapt from the frying pan and into the fire today when he presided over his first meeting of the Chicago City Council and faced two key votes, winning just one. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with more. And Heather, the City Council voted 41-9 to ratify Johnson's plan to approve the mayor's committee leadership team. One of those dissenting votes, though, came from Alderman Scott Wagasback, who was ousted as Finance Committee chair.
I will continue to serve as a voice for integrity, independence, and reform in this City Council, as I always have, and I hope to forge a productive working relationship with the new administration.
Heather, didn't the City Council declare its independence just 2 months ago?
They sure did, but it was back to business as usual. Again, the City Council voting to allow a Chicago mayor to pick chairs of committees. Now, this elevates several key allies of Brandon Johnson's, including Alderman Pat Dowell and Alderman Carlos Ramirez-Rosa, who will serve as zoning committee chair and his floor leader. But it also reaches an olive branch out to people who did not support Brandon Johnson, including Walter Burnett, who will serve as both alderman of the 27th Ward and vice mayor. Now, typically that position is just ceremonial, but he will get his own budget of nearly $400,000 if a budget approval change is approved by the City Council. And you can see Brandon Johnson and Walter Burnett, they might have been on opposite sides of the mayoral race, but they're very much in sync now.
Okay. It'd be very interesting to see what he does with that position once he's got that budget. Now, he may have won that vote, but three conservative alderpeople blocked a vote on a proposal to dip into the city's surplus and earmark $51 million to help care for the migrants sent to Texas, from Texas to Chicago amid a political firestorm. Let's listen to what Mayor Johnson told you about how he plans to address the crisis that's exacerbated tensions between Black and Latino Chicagoans.
The tension that you are feeling, that we're all feeling, has more to do with the fact that we've had for too long Black residents that have had to bear the brunt of previous administrations and their austerity budgets. In fact, if you listen closely to the testimony, Black residents are not mad at migrants for seeking asylum here in the city of Chicago. You know what they're upset about? It's that communities have been disinvested in.
Heather, the City Council is going to meet on May 31st to try again to approve these funds. Does the mayor have the votes?
Well, there is no other plan because this $51 million will help the nearly 800 people right now living on the floor of police stations across the city as part of a humanitarian crisis. Now, there's nothing else the city can do between now and the end of June. We are going to see increasing pressure on Mayor Johnson to come up with a long-term plan to find somewhere to house, clothe, and feed these people who are coming. And the crisis has only gotten worse in the last 2 weeks. The number of people living in police stations has grown by more than 50%.
Okay. Significant problem for him to start working out. Heather, thanks so much. Of course, we'll see you in a bit for Spotlight Politics.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full coverage of today's City Council meeting on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. And now to Paris for some more of today's top stories.
Brandis, thanks very much. A testy exchange today at the Chicago School Board meeting.
I wanted to hear you out. I didn't want you to be defaming individuals. You can state your case. You just referred to our staff as corrupt. You referred to our staff as corrupt. That's defamation.
Right there, you're hearing the voice of board president Miguel Del Valle after asking security to escort the leader of the Principals Association, Troy LaRaviere, out of the meeting. Del Valle said LaRaviere was making defamatory comments while criticizing the removal of Lindblom High School's principal. LaRaviere has been critical of the district's investigation and process. Cyclists, Cook County is peddling its first ever bike plan. The county's Department of Transportation and Highways says the plan is intended to increase everyday cycling by connecting existing bike infrastructure to major destinations and creating a low-stress bike network. The plan would make connections within the existing trail system to eliminate gaps, study potential areas for new off-street trails, and support suburbs looking to add bike routes on residential streets. The music world mourns the death of the Queen of Rock and Roll. That is, of course, the unmistakable, legendary Tina Turner. She died today at her home in Switzerland after a long illness. She's, of course, revered for hits like What's Love Got to Do with It, Private Dancer, and iconic performances of Proud Mary, seen right here on WTTW's Soundstage program back in 1983. That was right before the major comeback that made her a global superstar. She is a multiple Grammy winner, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and 2005 recipient of the Kennedy Center Honors. Turner was 83 years old, and we'll have music from Tina Turner to close out this program later tonight. After a slight detour, Illinois is back on the road to having a new and on-time state budget. Democrats unveiling their plan just a few hours ago. Amanda Vinicky joins us now from the Capitol in Springfield with the very latest. Amanda.
Yes, Paris, this deal is fresh, so much so that it isn't actually reality yet. There's no budget bill that has technically been introduced. When I went to check about a half an hour ago, what the measure that is supposed to become the budget, well, it's just a stand-in, really, appropriating $2, when in reality, the spending plan is going to instead spend something more along the lines of $50 billion. I say around because when he was asked this afternoon as he introduced it alongside the Democratic leaders of the legislature, Governor J.B. Pritzker couldn't say precisely how much this spending plan is going to spend, just that it is going to be around that $50 billion mark. Still, Pritzker stands fully behind it.
I will be proud to sign this budget when it arrives on my desk. This budget means that we're on a path to eliminating childcare deserts, relieving some of the burden on parents who need to work while ensuring kids get quality care.
The plan also puts more money into K through 12 schools and will allow those who are in low and middle income families to attend community college without having to pay tuition or fees. Now, to that end, Democrats say that this is a plan that makes good on two of their promised goals. For one, they say it's balanced.
The agreement we've reached will produce another responsible, balanced budget that reinforces our state's economic stability while making progress on key issues for the people of Illinois.
Also, they say it reflects their progressive values.
It makes smart investments in the services people need, and it is compassionate. Something you've heard me continuously say is a top priority for House Democrats. I talk to them all the time about our why. I ask them to remember our why. We're here because we care about people.
Amanda, as mentioned earlier, there was a roadblock along the path to this compromise, although I don't think it was a big one because Democrats have supermajorities. So refresh us on what that was and how it was resolved.
Well, it was a big one in the sense of a dollar figure. That main dispute had been over a program that provides health care for undocumented residents, and the Pritzker administration had projected that costs were going to soar over $1 billion. More, the governor said, than Illinois could afford, especially if it was going to cover other needs. Now, we do not yet have details on how much this spending plan projects to spend on that program, but the governor says that what the deal is contingent on is his getting the tools, like, for example, charging co-pays that will allow his administration to rein in those costs and to manage it.
Allows us to provide health care for the people who are on the program now, and make sure that we're continuing the program going forward, but in a budget-friendly way so that everybody gets the health care that they need.
I should remind everyone it's a projected cost. We don't know how much it's going to end up costing. What's the feedback so far?
Well, it's early yet, and as I said, we still don't actually have a budget, and I'm told that, in fact, conversations are still ongoing. Still, what we know is that the governor and Democratic leaders clearly expect members of their party, who, as you noted, hold a supermajority, to be on board. The state Republican Party, not impressed clearly with Chairman Don Tracy issuing a statement saying this budget constitutes a partisan wish list, not a negotiation. With complete control of government, Illinois Democrats continue to tax and spend. We also have feedback from a group that represents frontline staff who work in community settings with the developmentally disabled. They had been seeking a $4 an hour wage increase. They say something that is needed because there's a huge wait list for those programs and workers don't get paid enough. Instead, this plan gives only half of that. It is still, again, somewhat early for feedback to a degree because there really isn't much opportunity for a lot of change. The new deadline that the legislature has given themselves is this Friday. And if they are set to meet that, then the Senate has to have a plan introduced on paper before the legislature before midnight tonight.
All right, Amanda,
with that, back to you.
Hold that thought, because up next, our Spotlight Politics team takes on Springfield and City Hall, so please stick around.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And as we've just heard, a lot of action in both Springfield and the Chicago City Council. Here with all that and more is our Spotlight Politics team. Of course, welcome back, everybody. Paris, Heather, Amanda. So starting with Mayor Brandon Johnson, presiding over his first City Council meeting today, and despite some tough votes, deployed his sense of humor to keep things light.
This City Council meeting is being recorded live from Naperville.
That's a dig at Fox News. And after the meeting, he had a tongue-in-cheek announcement.
I didn't want to make this breaking news today because my wife is not aware of this, but it is my full intentions to develop my stand-up routine and take it on the road.
Good to see the new mayor's got a sense of humor on his first day. Heather, how did alderpeople react to what may be a very different tone from the combative one that folks grew used to under the previous mayor?
I think people were pleasantly surprised, but I think people were a little bit shocked because this was such a different tone than Mayor Lori Lightfoot took, who was always, her first instinct was to be combative. Johnson's first instinct, of course, is to poke fun at himself and everybody else there and to be collaborative, sort of bring everybody in on the joke. But he can also be pointed. That dig at Fox News was based on a Fox and Friends morning show that sort of purported to talk to Chicagoans about what they thought about his election, but it was, of course, recorded in Naperville. So he's got a wit, and sometimes it can be a little bit sharp.
But I think, though, that's going to work very well for him, because let's not forget what the former Alderwoman Susan Sadlowski-Garza said about Mayor Lightfoot. I'm going to paraphrase. She said, Mayor Lightfoot, and this is her words, has this instinct of, quote unquote, ticking off everybody she comes into contact with. And that included allies. And that, I think, hurt. Brandon Johnson, you need 2 or 3 votes. You got to twist some arms. That sense of humor, that relationship might help you on that. But given this reorganization vote today, 41-9 in Johnson's favor to set the committee chairs, this is not a very big opposition block, Heather. And so I think he's going to have Daley-esque or Rahm margins here in City Council, at least to start off. Lightfoot didn't have those.
Okay, so let's go to Springfield because here's what Illinois House Speaker Chris Welch had to say about the state's budget deal.
This budget is balanced, without gimmicks. This budget is fiscally responsible, and it's actually compassionate too.
Amanda, given that Democrats control all the levers of power in Springfield, how difficult was it to reach this deal?
Well, this roadblock that we talked about earlier was a fairly significant one that halted things, brought the legislature back when they were supposed to be done. That said, it was more a matter of if, or of when, not if. So they did coalesce. We don't yet have the numbers. Again, I think still talks are ongoing despite the fact that a deal has been announced. So it shows Democrats able to get there. They had the numbers, had to get it done. They're going to do it.
Well, they've got the numbers, you say. I mean, but was there any outreach or input from the GOP on this?
So that's something we're still actually waiting for feedback from the Republican caucuses. The GOP here in the House had complained that they had been shut out of talks, while the Senate Republicans said that they were part of things. And so we don't yet have any real feedback beyond that conversations are ongoing. So this is sort of a muddled message in that you have a deal, but we don't have a revenue figure, we don't have a spending figure, we don't have a budget on paper, and talks still ongoing.
But let's be honest. I mean, Democrats really don't need Republicans in this process. It's good to involve all points of view. They want to say it's bipartisan, right? They need it for maybe appearances, but for all practical purposes, they really don't need it with supermajorities.
They can get this done without them. All right, that is Spotlight Politics team. Amanda Vinicky, Paris Schutz, and Heather Schroen. Thanks, everybody. Up next, former CPS CEO Janice Jackson on expanding access to college for Black and Latino students. That's in a conversation recorded earlier this week. But first, a look at the weather. College costs are on the rise for many students across the country. The nonprofit Hope Chicago aims to remove financial barriers for thousands of Chicago public school students by allowing them to attend college debt-free. A new report finds college enrollment rates averaged 74% in the organization's first year partnering with 5 CPS high schools. That is a 17% increase. Joining us now with more is Janice Jackson, CEO of Hope Chicago and former CEO of Chicago Public Schools. Janice, welcome back. It's been a while since we've had the chance to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Hope Chicago, you all shared some new research yesterday about the impact of debt-free college and vocational scholarship programs like yours. And specifically among the findings, it reduces the racial borrowing gap. The Black and brown students are expected to borrow $11,000 more than white students for the same education.
Yeah.
How does Hope Chicago remove that financial barrier for people who want to attend college?
Well, I think the first thing we do is get students into college who either otherwise wouldn't do it or would have made different choices because of money. With the success of the first year, we can see right away that students are making different choices. Their behaviors have changed towards college because finances are no longer an issue. But we go further because we wanted people to understand it's not just a scholarship program, but that it really does narrow the economic and wealth gap between Black and Latino students and their white counterparts. And some of the impact we shared with a group at City Club yesterday and made a big announcement about it because we really wanted people to understand that if you make this investment up front, that on the back end, we yield a lot more, not just the participants, but the city and the state as well.
You told the City Club of Chicago that rising college costs are a civil rights issue.
Yeah.
How so?
I mean, if you look at it, we're not educating enough Black and Latino students in any system across this country. Fast forward 20 years from now, majority of our populace will be Black and Latino. We're falling short on educating them at the higher ed level. And if that doesn't change, we have to start asking ourselves, what does that do for the global positioning of the United States? This is a huge issue. And we know that all roads lead back to finance, whether that be the quality of schooling they got leading up to college or the money that they will have in order to access a college education.
What do you say when people, question whether college is even worth it given how much it costs these days?
Yeah, you know what? I get that question all the time. And what I say back to people are two things. One, no one ever says that about their own children. Everybody has those hopes and dreams. But when we start to talk about Black and brown students or first generation students, there are a lot of questions about what we know. We know in order to have a great job in this economy, you need a post-secondary credential or degree. That's a fact. The other thing I say to people is like, look, we have always built this country on the belief that we needed an educated populace, and that's what we have to continue to do. Just like we made high school compulsory, 100 years ago, we have to start looking at education beyond high school in order to make sure we're educating enough folks.
What other kind of supports does Hope Chicago provide for students once they're in college? Because for them, it's a new world.
Yeah, because money is not the only issue, right? You need to provide wraparound supports, and that takes on a variety of things. First, we work with the colleges who provide a lot of support for first-gen students, and we rely on that. But we've also partnered with organizations like College Possible, Bottom Line, and 1 Million Degrees. All of them have research-based practices where they come in and support students, whether that be academically or on some of the social emotional issues that they need.
I have to ask you, while we've got you here, starting next year, CPS will begin that transition towards an elected school board. You haven't necessarily been a big proponent of an elected school board. How do you think this is going to go down?
21 members is just too big. Number two, we need to start organizing ourselves around this and make it a truly democratic process. Right now, most parents, if you walk up to them on the street, they cannot tell you anything about this new governance model. The new maps that have come out need to be re-examined. Most of our students are Black and Latino. They should be represented on the school board. And I'm just afraid that it's moving too quickly without enough oversight, and I'm worried about what that means. The other thing I highlighted yesterday is who's fighting for Black kids. At the end of the day, there's a lot that needs to happen on the South and the West side around schooling, quality of school, type. And I want to make sure that however this board is organized, there are champions there to make sure that we get excellence in the classroom so our kids can compete.
And of course, you're referring to your speech at the City Club on Monday. We've got just a couple of seconds left. The anniversary of the closure of 50 schools in Chicago Public Schools was this week as well. It's been 10 years. How do you reflect on that?
I think it's a part of the history of Chicago Public Schools, and it's good to see the coverage on that. We have to learn from the past. I would also encourage people to look at what I would consider to be the largest school closing in our history, and that's when our schools were closed during the pandemic. And so we can't move forward and make the kind of impact that's necessary until we acknowledge that school closing and how we're going to fix it going forward, because there are a lot of problems that haven't been addressed, and that's something that I want to continue talking about.
Okay, Janice Jackson, we'll have you back to talk about all that stuff some other time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we're back with more Chicago Tonight right after this.
If you've ever wanted to make your own rug, and who hasn't, we might have the place for you. Arts correspondent Angel Ito introduces us to a tufting class in Bridgeport that aims to bring more fun to the South Side.
I really love the neighborhood. I really want to bring something more fun to Bridgeport.
With a simple desire, Ernie Pun called her now business partner Susan Lee, and Freestyle Ceramics was born.
We first start with a ceramic because a ceramic is have no age limit.
Less than a year later, Pun and Lee expanded beyond ceramics to include freestyle tufting, a new art class concept that allows anyone to make their own rug.
We got a lot of phone calls after 1 month we started tufting that people like, oh, so I'm trying to book online, but you guys are no availability. Yeah.
What started at 8 seats quickly expanded to 24.
You see the yarn here should be always tracing on top of the marker, so that's how you follow exactly. And then that's the part that you really want to do tap, 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 and don't press and hold. Okay. Otherwise, it's going way too fast for you to follow. Okay. Tap, and you turn the gun along the way. Are you ready for the fun part?
Yes, I am.
Ready to try?
I am.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous, but I'm ready.
All right.
Each session begins with a practice tutorial to ensure every tufter feels comfortable with the tufting gun.
So you just push in, okay?
I just kind of wanted to see the difference. What do we think?
Very good. Your first time?
Yes. Is that tight? Is that because that was more like this one,
yes.
Right?
Again, there's no right or wrong. The gun we use is also the newest in the market. If you don't use the gun correctly, it's easy to poke holes of the fabric. So we have the ability to fix any of those issues.
After finishing the tutorial, the tufter sketches their image with the help of a projector, and then it's off to the races. Okay, we're set. With the smallest size offered taking about 3 hours to complete, Pun says the only requirement to do well is to have fun. Oh my gosh, this actually looks really good.
One thing about tufting is you don't really have to be an artist in order to make it happen.
Oh my gosh, this is beautiful. For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.
Look at that, beautifully done. Rug tufting begins at $68 with a $10 studio fee. We have more information on our website.
We should probably be getting those rugs around the office.
In the studio.
In the studio. And that's our show for this Wednesday night. Please join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. How residents across the city are celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
And a rousing revival of a gospel musical hits the stage with an all-star Chicago cast. And we leave you tonight with more of Tina Turner from WTTW's soundstage, recorded at the Park West in 1983. Here she is performing one of her signature songs, Nutbush City Limits. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz.
And I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.